Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. From ancient times to the present, for criminals sentenced to death. Life feels like an hourglass turned upside down, counting down to its inevitable end. As time slips away, an overwhelming anxiety surges like a flood, eventually leading to an unavoidable breakdown. In their despair, these individuals, filled with unfulfilled regrets and unwillingness, march toward the end of their lives. Only a rare decree of amnesty, such as one issued during the ascension of a new emperor or by the highest authority, could grant them a slim chance of survival. However, during the Zhenguan era of the Tang dynasty, Emperor Taizong, Li Shimin, did something astonishingly unprecedented. Instead of granting a direct pardon, he introduced a groundbreaking practice, allowing death row inmates temporary freedom to fulfill their bucket list before agreeing to return at a designated time to face their fate. This remarkable event is not folklore but a well-documented historical account, famously known as the death contract between Emperor Taizong and 390 condemned prisoners. The historical background of Emperor Taizong. According to historians, Li Shimin, later celebrated as a wise ruler, ascended to the throne through a highly contentious path. As the Duke of Qin and a brilliant military commander, he garnered widespread support for his succession, drawing the ire of Crown Prince Li Jiaqing. Facing suppression and marginalization, Li Shimin orchestrated the infamous Xuanwu Gate incident, where he personally killed Li Jiaqing during the intense confrontation. This bold coup forced his father, Emperor Guangxu, to abdicate, enabling Li Shimin to seize the throne. Such an experience adds a layer of complexity to Li Shimin's character. He was decisive and ruthless, traits that may not define him as a dutiful son or brother but undoubtedly shaped him as an exceptional ruler for the nation. Under his reign, the Tang dynasty ushered in an era of prosperity, known as the Reign of Zhenguan, a period so influential that its legacy persists in the global phenomenon of Chinatowns. Balancing ruthlessness and compassion. Li Shimin's ruthlessness did not conflict with his compassion. For a ruler, benevolence is essential, but weakness is unacceptable. Allowing an unworthy and incapable individual to occupy the throne would result in untold suffering for the people. His drastic measures were not only acts of self-preservation but also actions for the greater good of the empire. In the context of feudal monarchies, stories of familial strife and power struggles are common. Compared to other rulers, Li Shimin's actions were not the most extreme. In fact, a ruler lacking decisiveness would find it impossible to secure their position amidst the volatile political landscape of the imperial court. This balance of strength and benevolence enabled Li Shimin not only to stabilize his rule but also to lay the foundation for a flourishing Tang dynasty. He ruled with an iron fist to ensure peace while governing with wisdom and compassion, earning his place in history as a revered monarch, a leader who listened and reformed. After ascending the throne, Li Shimin demonstrated an openness to criticism, even appointing Wei Zheng, a former advisor to his rival Li Jiaqing, as one of his chief ministers. Embracing the philosophy of heeding diverse opinions leads to clarity, while listening to one side leads to obscurity, he focused on economic development, legal reform, and administrative improvement, steering the Tang dynasty toward prosperity. With rising living standards and increased legal deterrence, crime rates during the Zhenguan era plummeted, leaving many prisons unoccupied. By the winter of the 6th year of Zhenguan, the imperial court commenced its customary review of death sentences, a practice dating back to the Han dynasty. Known as recording prisoners, this process required the emperor or local officials to review cases and verify evidence to prevent wrongful executions. The birth of the death contract. One day, Li Shimin personally reviewed the cases of 390 death row inmates. As he read through their files, his furrowed brow reflected his unease. The gruesome punishments these prisoners faced, such as dismemberment or being cut in half, deeply disturbed him. He ordered that these punishments be replaced with beheading to lessen their suffering. Yet this decision did not bring him peace of mind. Li Shimin wondered, in a time of prosperity, why would people still risk their lives committing such serious crimes? Delving deeper into their cases, he began to question whether their crimes were truly unforgivable. Driven by this doubt, Li Shimin disguised himself and, accompanied by a few guards, visited the prisoners in person to uncover the truth behind their stories. The heavily guarded cell was brightly lit under the glow of torches. Although Li Shimin was not wearing the Imperial dragon robe, the Emperor's imposing aura still struck fear into most of the prisoners, who knelt trembling, not daring to lift their heads. However, a few prisoners remained indifferent, their expressions cold as though they no longer feared death. And some even showed faint disdain. Cries echoed throughout the cell. Among them, one prisoner sobbing the loudest caught Li Shimin's attention. "What is your name? What crime have you committed?" Li Shimin asked. The man trembled as he replied, "This humble one is Zhang Quanbao. I worked as a laborer for a wealthy family. A few days ago, my newlywed wife was seized by the family's young master. When I confronted them, the household servants beat me up. Enraged, I grabbed a wooden staff and struck the young master dead. The authorities didn't investigate the cause but simply convicted me of murder and sentenced me to death." After hearing this, Li Shimin sighed lightly and said, "Murder demands justice. This is the natural order. But why didn't you appeal to the authorities for justice and let them resolve it for you?" Zhang Quanbao gave a bitter laugh and replied, "The authorities had already been bribed by that wealthy family. I couldn't even set foot inside the yamen. Desperate and with nowhere to turn, I acted out of rage. Now, I cannot escape the death sentence, but the thought of my unborn child makes it impossible for me to die in peace." Zhang Quanbao's words left Li Shimin silent. As he spoke, other prisoners began sharing their grievances. After questioning them one by one, it became clear that only 29 of the nearly 400 prisoners were truly guilty of heinous crimes. The rest had mitigating circumstances or did not deserve the death penalty at all. Some had elderly parents at home with no one to care for them, some had yet to leave behind descendants. And some were the sole breadwinners of their families. Without them, their entire households would fall into ruin. Li Shimin fell into deep thought. While abolishing the death penalty outright was not an option, the plight of these prisoners made it difficult for him to harden his heart. After pacing for a while, he suddenly came up with an idea. He turned to Zhang Quanbao and asked, "If I let you go home to fulfill your wishes, would you return next year on time to face your punishment?" Zhang Quanbao was momentarily stunned. Then, he kowtowed repeatedly, making a solemn promise, "Your Majesty, though I am but a commoner, I will never break my word. I will return as promised and will not betray your grace." The officials nearby were flabbergasted and quickly protested, "Your Majesty, this cannot be. If these prisoners escape, where will the court's authority stand? Releasing them is like letting tigers back into the wild, the consequences will be unimaginable." Li Shimin raised his hand to silence them and said calmly, "I have made my decision. This matter will be discussed further in tomorrow's court session. You need not say more." The prisoners knelt and repeatedly proclaimed, "Long live His Majesty," their gratitude evident through their tears. Li Shimin laughed heartily and consoled them, "Save your thanks for now. This matter requires further deliberation before a decision can be made. It's late, get some rest, and I shall return to the palace." The following day at court, after the ministers had concluded their usual reports, Li Shimin presented his proposal to release 390 death row prisoners to return home for the new year. Officials from the Court of Judicial Review and the Ministry of Justice immediately stood up in protest. Their arguments were much the same as those made in the prison: nearly 400 dangerous criminals were being set free. What if they committed more murders and arson? Even if they didn't? What if they fled to the mountains and never returned? Capturing them again would be a waste of resources and an enormous burden on the people. Li Shimin yawned as he listened to the officials finish their arguments. Slowly and deliberately, he said. A wise ruler governs the realm by winning people over with virtue. I have reviewed the cases of these individuals. Most of them were driven to rebel by oppressive officials, leaving them no other choice. Their actions are understandable. I believe in them, they are not inherently evil. If I grant them mercy, they will repay me with loyalty. If word spreads, wouldn't this also become a story of goodwill and virtue? Hearing this, no one dared to oppose him further. The court session ended amidst the resounding cries of, "The Emperor is wise." After the court, Li Shimin went to the prison and addressed the 390 inmates. Just now, during the court session, the ministers agreed with my decision to release you. Today, you are free to go. Take care of your remaining affairs, whether it's raising children or caring for the elderly. However, by this time next year, you must return. If you don't, it will be a betrayal of my trust and efforts. The prisoners, overwhelmed, praised the emperor's wisdom and kowtowed fervently. Even those who had initially harbored resentment were now sincerely moved by the emperor's magnanimity, their faces streaked with tears. Li Shimin ordered that they be bathed, shaved, and dressed in fresh clothes before being released from the prison. Watching their retreating figures, Emperor Taizong smiled knowingly. As time flew by, the promised date of the following lunar December approached. The year-long pact between Li Shimin and the 390 prisoners was about to expire, yet not a single inmate had returned. The court and the public buzzed with speculation, with many spectators eager for drama. Li Shimin, however, remained calm, exuding confidence, seemingly unconcerned about the potential embarrassment of a massive failure. Soon, a remarkable scene unfolded in Chang'an. Hundreds of people began converging on the prison from all directions. Their strides purposeful and spirited. When they saw the prison guards, they greeted them warmly like old friends. They then donned prison uniforms and cheerfully walked back into their cells. Within just a few days, all 390 death row inmates released by Li Shimin returned on their own. None had fled, nor had any committed further crimes while out on parole. When Li Shimin heard this, he was deeply moved and immediately went to the prison to visit them. Zhang Quanbao, one of the prisoners, greeted the emperor with joy and said, "Your Majesty, I became a father. I got to witness the birth of my child and see his smile. I have no regrets. If I must be executed, I am ready." Li Shimin, delighted, looked at the group before him and said loudly, "You are all men of honor who value trust and commitment. Over the past year, you've had the chance to fulfill your wishes. And it is as if you've lived through death itself. Today, by returning, you have been reborn. I have decided to pardon your death sentences. I hope you will remember the lessons of the past. When faced with adversity, don't act recklessly. Cherish what you have and live well." With that, Li Shimin released all the prisoners, making it a legendary tale for generations. The emperor's magnanimity and the prisoners' integrity became a vivid reflection of the prosperity and order of the reign of Zhengguan. Through his actions, Li Shimin demonstrated to the world that ruling by force breeds more violence, while governing with virtue fosters lasting peace and stability. This prisoner release event is recorded in both the New Book of Tang and Zizhi Tongjian, attesting to its authenticity. From a modern perspective, Li Shimin was not only an outstanding statesman but also a master of self-promotion. His primary audience was himself. After all, Li Shimin's rise to power through the Xuanwu Gate incident had tarnished his reputation, with many seeing him as a ruthless figure who had killed his brothers and defied his father. However, this sensational prisoner release reshaped his image, portraying him as a benevolent and compassionate ruler, a textbook example of successful public relations. The 390 pardoned prisoners, without additional incentives, became his best advocates. Returning to their hometowns, they naturally shared stories of the emperor's mercy and trust. This word-of-mouth campaign was cost-effective yet highly impactful. Was there risk in this event? Of course, but it was minimal. During the reign of Zhenguan, the Tang dynasty was at its zenith. And imperial authority was unshakable. Across the land, all under heaven belongs to the emperor, all within its borders are his subjects. Even if someone considered escaping, they would face immense pressure. If caught, not only would the fugitive lose their life, but their family and even their neighbors might suffer. Thus, any rational person would avoid taking such risks. This stable social order and stringent legal system were the very foundation of Li Shimin's confidence in releasing the prisoners. Some historians comment that while this event might seem incredible, every step was carefully calculated, leading to a perfectly satisfying outcome. Li Shimin not only displayed wisdom and courage but also deeply ingrained his image of tolerance and benevolence in the hearts of the people. His intelligence and foresight contributed to the prosperity of the reign of Zhenguan and laid the groundwork for the Tang dynasty's flourishing era. He truly deserved the title of a wise ruler of his time. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.